Hey everybody, wanted to get right in it and talk about tires, primarily race tires, something like a M&H, Mickey Thompson ET Street, Slick, anything like that, your old school bias ply. This is primarily for those that are just getting into racing. You're trying to figure out, what tire do I buy? You don't know. So you have a pretty broad range of options just when you're talking about tires and what the benefits would be. The range is broader than what we can cover in 5 to 8 minutes. So I'm just going to stick to a particular subject, primarily for those that are just getting into racing and you're trying to figure out what tire to get. I'm not going to tell you there's a magic tire out there that's going to fit everything, but I'm just going to give you some options and something to think about when you're trying to decide what tire. Create these options in your mind, so that way it'll help you figure out what you may want. So primarily, you right off the bat, you have drag radials. The benefit to drag radial is the fact of being able to drive them on the street. They're better handling because obviously it's a radial tire, and that's really probably right now probably one of the most popular tires out there as far as racing is concerned, next to a Slick maybe, is the drag radial, because there's such a broad range of options. Obviously there's guys going out there, they're running 3s in the 8th mile. There's record holders right now. There's a guy that I know that I've known for probably 30 years or close to it. He's a record holder. I don't know if he's current or not, but his name is J.D. Campbell, and he's killing it with a drag radial. So obviously there's a lot that goes along with that. You have suspension tuning. There's a lot that goes with that. It's not just you put a set of radials on your car and you're ready to rock and roll. So I want to talk basically for your back to the ones that are just getting started. So do you need a tire that you can drive on the street and on the track? Here's some things to think about if that's the direction you want to go. Check out the pricing of the tire and understand when you run a drag radial on the street, especially if let's say you're driving your car every day and you're driving a drag radial, it's not going to be a usable tire for very long. They do not have a long life span because the compounds are soft. So when you're going around corners and stuff like that, you're wearing those tires out. And of course, as with all of us, when we're first getting started and you're getting something with a little power, you're spinning those tires over. Just remember, every time you do a burnout, every time you spin those tires over, acting silly, doing whatever that doesn't count for a race, that's costing you money. If you don't have the money to constantly buy tires, you need to be thoughtful on the idea that you're going to have to replace those tires sooner than the average guy because you're acting silly when you're driving around. You're taking corners really fast, that's wearing out the outside edges of your tire. When you're doing donuts, tearing up your tires. So just keep that in mind, that when you're buying a set of like a drag radial or some type of tire that you're going to be able to drive on the street and take it down the track to increase your traction, they are softer compounds, so they're not going to live as long. So if you're on a budget, you need to put that into mind. And you're like, well, how long will they last? Well, I mean, how silly are you driving? You know what I mean? That's not an answer that can actually be answered. But you can kind of figure if you're only in the 300 horsepower range, maybe 400, something like that, and you're out driving the car around, and let's say you just drive decent all the time, and the only time you ever do it is, right before you go race at the track, you do a little burnout here and there. Let's say you don't do a drastic burnout. I can't see the average drag radial driving on the street, and you being as conservative as you possibly can. I can't see them being a good tire past 5,000 miles, and that may still be a little high. Some people may get more mileage out of it, but they're probably not racing a whole lot. They're probably just driving around on them for that just in case moment. But for the average person, I just can't see it being a great tire past 5,000 miles. Maybe 10, but that's, in my opinion, that's stretching it pretty far. So then when you go to, let's say, a track-only tire, you get you an extra set of wheels, and you're getting you a tire. Something you got to think about is the height, because a lot of people, they'll go two different directions. You know, what you're normally driving on, and then you go and you get a tire to put on your car, and let's say it's taller than normal, you're actually killing your overall gear ratio. That's actually hitting the ground, right? So it changes your torque curve. So you get out to the track and you're running that taller tire. Depends on obviously how drastic, because I mean it could be anywhere from a 1/4 inch to 2 inches taller. So obviously there's some variables there. But I want to give you some benefits on running a taller tire versus a shorter tire when it comes to stuff like that, is that sidewall. You know, when let's say you have a standard transmission, you get out there, you can shock that tire. If you go look at a lot of the old videos, that's what those old guys were doing versus the guy with a converter, where you get on the gas, you get on the pedal, and you get it, and it's all leaning up on the tire. Well, the old standard transmission guys, they were getting better 60-foots, right? And the reason for that is they were shocking that tire. And if you look at some of the slow-mo, look at some of your top fueler stuff slow-mo, that gives you a better idea because it's more drastic. The wheel actually would turn inside the tire. You can actually see in what they call wrinkle walling. You know, it's wrinkled because it's when it's just sitting there. You know, it's soft sidewall, so it sits. But also, when it's accelerating, you see the tire or the wheel turning inside the tire. Well, what that's doing, it almost works like a rubber band for you. And so when the lights are coming down and you leave it on that last yellow, and if you can shock that tire by like a standard transmission, get it some revs, you pop that clutch, that right there will help sling you out a little bit on that 60-foot, just a little bit. But hey, you know, when you're looking for little bitty numbers, it all adds up in the long run when you're going down the track. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. It's just a little bitty trick, but it does help out with your traction as long as your suspension is somewhat in decent shape. The downside, it can be positive, it can be negative, just all kind of really depending on what you got going on. But when you run that little bit taller tire, it can slow you down on the 60-foot. But if you're already geared kind of low, let's say you have a 373, 410 gear, 430 gear, something like that, and you're driving around on a shorter tire all the time, but when you go to the track, now you can take advantage of that by running a little bit taller tire. And yeah, it may kill you a little bit on the 60-foot. It may kill it because of you lose a little bit of your gearing. But what ends up happening is it will help you out on the top end. So where if you go down the track a lot of times, and by the time you get down to the end of the line, you're already geared out. You know, you're already at your max, and you're over geared to actually do an actual 1/4 mile or whatever drag race. That taller tire will actually help you, and you'll get a little bit more mile per hour. You'll get a better mid-range and top-end charge, which isn't always bad. There's a happy medium there. You just got to figure it out with your car. There's not a magic number, because if there was a magic number, all the top guys would already have it, and they would never tune their car again, right? So you got to think about that. So then you go to a shorter tire. Then maybe like you have a taller tire on your car or truck, and you go to a shorter one because you want that extra gear ratio. So then when you pull into the line with that shorter tire, it increases your 60-foot. It helps you out a little better. But the downside is it may tack you out a little further. You know, you may hit your maximum RPMs before you go to the end of the line, just depending on your transmission and your RPM range of your car. So just something else you got to play with and figure out. But those are things you got to think about when you're trying to figure out what tire you want to get. Understand, if you already have a traction problem and you go to a shorter tire, you're going to potentially make your traction problem worse. There's some physics involved there. We'll touch on that sometime in the future. But those are just a couple of little small pieces that can help you when choosing a tire, whether a tall tire, short tire, drag radial, slick, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of thoughts that you need to put into it to decide on what's the best tire for you to run for whatever you're trying to do. Keep it in a budget. It works out. There's a lot of guys selling used tires because they're making a bunch of power, and they get a handful of passes. They have to go to a fresh tire. Where when some of these lower horsepower guys, that's a good way for you to save money, is to buy a tire that the big power guys, they can't use the tire anymore. It's already got past its point for them. So then you can grab the tire and save you a little bit of money, because you can buy them for half off or more sometimes. So that's something to keep in mind when you're searching for tires. But if you have any questions on anything, post it in the comments. If I don't have the answer, which I don't always do, I've got a lot of guys, a lot of friends that are really, really fast that I can grab some information from them, and it will help you out in the long run. I'll do the best I can. Anyway, get to the track, get to racing, and y'all have a good time. Y'all be safe. Take care.